My guest today is Avi Zurlo. Avi is the new CEO of or at a Nil Foundation, a general purpose Ethereum Layer 2. Welcome to the show, Avi.
Hey, Andy, thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Good to see you and welcome to the show. Hey, let's do what we do at the beginning of the show. It would be super cool if you could please introduce yourself, share some of your background, your personal and professional backstory. Please update the listeners and myself on what you've been doing in the lead up to becoming CEO at Nil Foundation.
Sure thing. I'm happy to be here, Andy. We'll have a good conversation today. So I am the CEO at Nil Foundation. My name is Avi Zurlo. Prior to holding the CEO role, I was the Chief Product Officer. And prior to that, my former life was a venture investor at Delphi Digital, where I focused on early stage pre-seed, seed, Series A crypto investing. And my crypto journey began, like many others, in the mid-teens, 2016, and started as a hobby that turned into an obsession and then a profession. And I feel very fortunate to have been able to take such an evolution to the point where we're at today. And yeah, today I'm at Nil Foundation and leading the team there, and we're building it, as you said, a general purpose layer 2 for Ethereum. It's based on a new fancy architecture, zkSharding. And I'm happy to get into it today.
Yes, indeed, because I think you guys have just launched a testnet, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about all things Ethereum, all things Ethereum Layer 2s, all things Nil Foundation. But just before we do that, I know you've just been quite recently appointed as CEO, so we should congratulate you on that. But also just, I suppose, ask the question, it's a really interesting one. Firstly, is that something you were looking for? And also, what does it mean? What does it entail? What does it mean to be the CEO of an Ethereum Layer 2? What does that mean, Avi, in today's world?
Yeah, it's a great question, Andy. It's one I'm figuring out myself. Like everything else in this world. I think it means different things at different companies. So I can't speak on behalf of anybody else or any other Layer 2. At Nil Foundation, I really see my role as pouring fuel to our fire, right? And the company began in 2018, started sort of doing very low-level engineering work in the world of the applied cryptography world. Very, very early movers to developing zk technology, writing circuits, building out some really visionary primitives for zk developer tooling with zkLVM and proof market. And in January of 2023, the company really shifted its focus to building out this layer 2. And since then, it's been, kind of this, this forcing function of the organization evolving into something new. And I think, by and large, done a really incredible job at that, which is not an easy process. Going from, a mindset of building out, really low-level infrastructure and, being, contracts for hire into a product company and, working with stakeholders at all levels of the stack, right? It's no longer just sort of this B2B service that's product that's, B2B, but also B2C, right? And interacting with end users and investors, et cetera. And so, yes, CEO, I see my job as just making sure that momentum, that trend of growth internally persists and compounds. And, so I'm there, leading and, guiding the organization and pouring on, lighter fuel. And then, at times putting out fires, where appropriate.
Yeah, sounds about right. Thank you for that. Avi, let's just learn a little bit more then about, the Nil Foundation, what you guys are doing. I can see, I guess in simple terms, the idea is that using the zkSharding approach. You are building or enabling a new generation of super highly scalable applications, and you do this by kind of distributing all the compute, the workloads across those different shards. So we can talk about this, but maybe just begin with what kind of the vision is from you guys with Nil Foundation.
Yeah. So in the early 2023, I think after spending many years working right alongside kind of the emerging ecosystems and blockchain ecosystems L2 and L1s, coming into 2023, I think one of the core observation was that, and question, are any of these really going to last? Are any of these things really going to scale to a global size, to handle a global load? And the classic example that people come back to is with regards to how much load is global load? Is they come back to Visa or MasterCard, right? And they pull that kind of 24,000 transactions per second number. And if you look at the state of the art today, we don't have anything that can handle that load, and that's talking about one single application, right? One financial application. And if you hold a very crypto maximalist view of the world and where we're moving, and that we continue to move into a more digital world, and value is digitized, in all industries, then you need, and you believe that these blockchains are a great substrate for this value to be transferred and mutated over and stored, then you need something that is going to scale far beyond what we have today. So the question is, well, how would you build a blockchain that is going to last decades? And that's where Nil and zkSharding kind of emerges, right? And the big bet here is that eventually applications themselves will need to scale. And what I mean by that is most of the state-of-the-art blockchain scaling today is how can you scale the blockchain itself? How can you scale the processing of more and execution of more transactions within a single block, and everybody mutate over that single block, single global state root, and all applications live within this block. Now, this is not how the world of Web 2 works, and in fact, the world of Web 2 lives over many boxes. It lives in this horizontal scaling world and universe where you are actually distributing workloads from applications like big data queries and AI and ML, but also to things that like finance and fintech and payments. These are applications that are distributed over many boxes, and applications themselves are actually sharding their logic. Right? They're partitioned across these processing units. And this is what we do at Nil. We enable developers actually, for the first time, really explore what it would mean to distribute logic across multiple boxes, across multiple shards, in the context of a blockchain, right? Where you have, trustlessness and censorship resistance and security. And this is what we're working on today, and this is what we've brought a little bit to the market with our Testnet and our Devnet, and this is where we're excited to explore.
Yeah, got it. Thank you for that. Very, very well articulated. And I think it'd be useful also to understand, because what's nice about what you guys are doing is that, zkSharding is an architecture that's kind of inspired by Ethereum's original vision for sharding, but I guess, revitalized or made super relevant again by zk technology. But that's, one path forward. That is the path that you guys are pursuing. But, the Ethereum Layer 2 space is, I think it's fair to say, notoriously, crowded or fragmented, confusing, however you want to describe it. So I think, you you more than most people are kind of deep in the weeds of the layer 2 space. Be fascinating, Avi, just to kind of get your perspectives on how you think about that Ethereum L2 space and whether everyone is kind of, are you all competing? Are you all trying to head in the same direction, but there are different paths to get there? Yeah, just interested in your thoughts on that landscape.
Yeah, great question. Well, I want to touch on, quickly. Yes, this zkSharding is inspired by Ethereum's original scaling vision of sharding, with native interoperability between shards, which wasn't part of the original vision, and of course, we used zkEVMs, right, to prove validity of execution and have guarantees across the network, not just to Ethereum. But you asked this question of, are we all moving to this single point? Or are we converging? And there's been actually some really great thinking about this, I think a little bit earlier this year over the summer around, these things are converging. And oftentimes people will say, oh, we're all building the same thing. Oh, the end game is the same for everybody at the end of these roadmaps. But as to your point, these things are path dependent. And right now, Ethereum's layer 2 ecosystem is at this really critical juncture, right, where they've effectively achieved quote unquote global scale. If you take the view of this entire ecosystem, right, and but it's completely fragmented, right, and in fact, new layer 2s that are just running essentially a single shard, right, which is what you could think of just sort of traditionally as a roll-up. Anybody who's running another roll-up, it's really not adding any new functionality to the ecosystem. So people are looking for, well, how do we piece these things back together? And there's a lot of great teams that are working on this effort, gluing things back together, gluing L2s together, such that they become one functional system. And once you have this functional system where all of these L2s and rollups, these islands can communicate with each other seamlessly, you end up at an architecture that looks very similar to zkSharding. Now, there are also other teams that are trying to glue things together, keep things together within their own ecosystem, right? Optimism with the super chain. zkSync with Elastic Chain. Recently, there was a new L1 Delta also coming out with this sort of similar vision of, many roll-ups or many shards, you might call them, with some sort of unification layer. Then, of course, Ethereum as settlement. And I believe this is where the space is heading. Now, zkSharding takes an opinionated view that rather than, trying to work backwards, right, where we built roll-ups, many people built roll-ups, and then let's glue them together. Well, what if we just design a protocol that actually keeps things as one, right, and would keep things as one in perpetuity? And when you design a protocol that does this, you get really interesting, a really interesting design phase. And this comes back to what I had mentioned about applications distributing their logic across shards. Because when you know that this single system is going to always be as one, an application developer can begin to reason about how they might actually split their logic, their application logic, across multiple of these shards or across multiple of these rollups. I use rollups and shards interchangeably. And this is really where we think the future is. This is where we think the entire space, eventually, once you get to this point where you have this seamless interoperability, you get rid of the fragmentation, everything functionally is one, which there are many, many challenges that lie ahead to actually getting there. But if you do, the next logical step is actually allowing developers to make more use of more machines. And this is where, we spend our time.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. Makes sense. I think it'd be useful then, Avi, to maybe just talk a little bit about the testnet, Nil Foundation testnet. You've just announced this, I think. So maybe just kind of bring us up to speed in terms of, what is different, what is unique, what is special about this? What have you learnt with it so far? What are your engineering teams planning to do with the feedback that they get? And maybe just kind of update us also on the plans to mainnet, what that would look like depending on, how that feedback process goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we launched our Devnet at ECC earlier this year in July, and we shared that with a small curated group of developers who have been working with it since, and we've been slowly adding folks who reach out. One thing that we're really, really conscious of and making an effort is this curation of picking and growing an ecosystem intentionally with the right people. And this testnet is kind of another moment of opening the Camino, so to speak, and letting some more people in to start tinkering with really the developer experience, right? And that we're trying to go out and do something that fundamentally it doesn't exist in the space, right? This ability for distributed transaction logic and a blockchain protocol that's built around that, and that thing mainly being the presence of asynchronicity or asynchronous execution is very underexplored. And what we look for in developers are people who have an aptitude for trying out new technologies and kind of being able to understand and provide feedback where the edges are rough, right? And that's really what we're looking for, because we know that there's a long road ahead of us to get this to this really great, wonderful, easy to use product. But we're marching, pretty steadily towards that end, really just a marker, which is mainnet. And mainnet is slated for the end of next year. We've got a testnet launch or upgrade in the beginning of the year, probably right around December. That will launch some of our zkEVM circuits, and we'll likely have start bringing in some node operators, some network operators, and then we'll have another one in the summer, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, we launch in Q4. And developers, that's the focus. Developers are the focus at the moment. We're going to kick the gears on, working with the end user, with community. We've got some really fun stuff planned with regards to boosting distribution, which I won't share quite yet. But the core focus for us is developers. We've got this new developer experience. We want to test it. Fortunately, for developers, you're able to redeploy Solidity contracts to a single shard. And if that's all you want to do, and you just want to kind of copy paste, hey, that's okay. But once you do, we're going to push you to check out this new fancy shiny thing with our developer experience, and hopefully collect some feedback.
Yeah, nicely said. And what I like is I've seen you talk about this somewhere else, but I think it's particularly relevant to the developer community. But you've described the approach that Nil Foundation is taking as quite opinionated architecture, Avi, which I think is a wonderful turn of phrase. But I'm sure that can be, in one sense, could be polarizing, because you guys have kind of said, well, this is the way forward. This is where we're going. We think this is the state of the art. And I'm sure that would be attractive to a certain set of developers, as long as they are not, I don't know, they don't have their feet stuck in the sand, trying to pursue another direction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, we all have everybody has an opinion. It's impossible not to have an opinion. I mean, I think Vitalik has a great line, something like, Ethereum may be credibly neutral, but I have opinions. Something like that, right? And the reality is technology is not unopinionated, right? Technology isn't actively, voicing or changing their opinions, right? And one of the great things about technology, especially blockchain, is that you can bake in, certain properties, right, that are insured by technology. They're insured by code, and they're immutable. And these things persist so long as the network lives. But those things that you decide to build, those properties, those are opinions. And we have some strong opinions. Frankly, I think many of them are probably a bit unpopular. But this is where we really see the future. And maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong, but we're definitely going to find out.
Yeah. Well, look, speaking of opinions, it'd be great to get some of your opinions on, I guess, the Ethereum ecosystem from a kind of a wider lens, perhaps. Also, the market itself. You have a great pedigree coming from Delphi Digital, so I know you're fascinated by all of this stuff and keep up to date. But it's been an interesting, fascinating up and down year in crypto. Kind of Ethereum got a little bit left behind, I think, in terms of market attention, being outperformed by Solana in that kind of smart contract platform space, and of course outperformed by Bitcoin in terms of ETF interest activity and performance. So does that kind of Ethereum feels like it's finding its way again in terms of a narrative that the mainstream perhaps can land on? So just interested in how you think about this stuff, wider market thoughts, Ethereum in general, where the next wave of adoption comes from, all that good stuff, the big picture existential stuff.
Yeah. Well, I definitely have a bunch of opinions here, Andy. Let me collect my thoughts. And I mean, number one, I think it's just important to just step back and take a view on just the macro trend line of what has happened over the last 10, 7, and 3 years. And the trend line is super clear. And for Ethereum, I think you really have a lot of momentum still within the ecosystem, despite how chaotic or volatile or underperforming ETH asset is, in this, last 12-month stretch. Now, I think I'll actually kind of draw on my observation of Solana. And I was 100% wrong about Solana, a year and a half ago, right? And, after FTX and, the outages, my view was that, Solana, there's no net new resources that are going to pour into Solana, right? And this, because it's just, it's not something that you're going to want to touch, right? Investors aren't going to want to touch it. Builders aren't going to want to touch it, right? And it's really up to the community and the ecosystem to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, solve some of the hard, technical problems with protocol, and then build value back up. And where I was wrong was I totally underestimated the quality and amount of resources that were available through Solana at that time of that kind of local minimum. Now, I see the same exact thing is playing out within Ethereum, right? Where you have this local minimum, where there's almost this feeling of despair and in some ways desperation. But when you look kind of very closely at what is happening, right, there are these sparks where a ton of resources and I'm talking about people and talent and money are actually coming together, put together solutions that address a lot of these existential problems. And I think it's very difficult for an outsider to actually understand how this has happened, just as how when I looked at Solana as an outsider, a year and a half ago, I saw, I couldn't see what was happening, right? I couldn't see that there was the really great talent that was actually the struggle was only bolstering their efforts, and they were going to come out of this fire, better than ever. And that's where I see Ethereum right now. I think that there are a few different paths that Ethereum can take, actually, and we can discuss those. But the important thing is that there are really high quality options, and eventually one is going to prevail. And Ethereum will kind of come out of the ecosystem at large will come out of this local minimum, and I think persist to be the largest programmable blockchain in the world.
Yeah, and look, I'm sure you have been tracking Vitalik's recent blog posts.
Yep.
on how he kind of thinks about the future path of Ethereum. And it's fascinating, we keep coming back to this idea of, people having opinions, where it's the idea of a blockchain, of course, is as neutral technology, but there are different people with different opinions, and even Vitalik has his opinion. Doesn't mean it's going to be consensus. But how do you feel, or how would you describe Vitalik's recent blog posts, and do they kind of align with what you would suggest is the best way forward?
Well, he covers a lot, right?
As
he always does, right? Yeah,
yes.
It's and it always blows me away and how much he, really, like, when you understand what it takes to put together just like a roadmap for a simple product, or and then you think about like what he's doing with Ethereum. It is truly it is remarkable, whether or not it is correct or not. Now, and I think that's actually the important insight. Again, putting aside like what path forward is the right path forward, you have resources, some of the best resources you could possibly imagine, spending time trying to solve these problems out. And you see Vitalik coming out with back to back four of these sort of visionary roadmap setting wartime mode articles that are giving people a sense of kind of direction on where to spend their efforts. Now, there are other views that actually conflict with what he put out, right? And those are also pockets that are like really, really strong. And and that's what gives me the confidence here, right? And I mean, for what it's worth, I believe what we're doing is in some ways an alternative to what a lot of other people are trying to do, right? When you look at the layer 2 ecosystem, you have, kind of a few things coming together at once, where you have these shared sequencer based roll-up, ag layer type middleware constructions that are trying to glue all of the roll-ups back together from underneath, call it. And then from on top, you have chain abstraction, which is trying to kind of build these platforms that allow a user to access funds and submit transactions across any network at once. And then you have a few things like zkSharding that's kind of taking like a totally different approach and saying we're going to actually kind of fix this whole protocol, this whole system, and we're going to explore what is a new kind of developer experience around the EVM that accommodates for async programming, distributed logic, handling all of the transactions and rollbacks that come with it, and just knowing that there are, as an investor, to put the investor cap on, right? All you have to know is that there are these resources being spent, and you have to believe that there are enough competent people who are within this system that are going to spend those resources effectively. You don't have to pick the right option, right? That's how I see Ethereum right now. Like I have very high conviction. In some ways, as an outsider, you don't have to pick the right option, right? You just know that there are many options being put together, and they're high quality. And of course, I have opinions on on what I think is the best option. And I think, what we're doing at NIL is the best option. It could be the best option, especially for, those really high load applications, which I believe inevitably will be every application in the space.
Yeah. Very well said. Once again, Avi, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Look, I reckon we finish up this part of the podcast here, and then, of course, we'll finish off by running you through the very famous Crypto Conversation hot take round. But just before we do that, do you want to just shout out the NIL Foundation website, any resources that developers should go and check out for people that want to perhaps learn more about what you guys are building, testnet access, all that kind of stuff? What is the best place for people to do that? What should they do? Where should they go?
Yeah, good question. nil.foundation, that's the website for developers. We've got an awesome sandbox. You can compile and deploy contracts from your phone. We've got incredible docs that have interactive code modules. We've got a great Uni v2 example. There's a lot of stuff that we've done that I'm excited for developers to kind of start sifting through. Definitely check out that sandbox. We'll be at DevCon, and so come find us there. What else? I mean, Twitter is always a good place. Always looking to grow followers. Crypto Twitter is where the industry lives. So find us on Twitter. Find me on Twitter. See you on the internet.
See you on the internets, indeed. All right. Well, just before we go, let's finish off the podcast by having a little bit of fun. Avi, let's run you through the very famous Crypto Conversation hot take round. Are you up for it?
Yeah, do it.
All right. I'm sure you know how this works. I'm just going to run some questions at you, Avi. I just want you to give me your honest kind of hot take style answers, rapid fire, if you like. But yeah, question one for you. It's a bit of a funny one to ask an Ethereum Layer 2 guy, but where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
I'm going to say an answer that's hot. I probably lie more to Bitcoin maximalist, and I'm going to explain why. Because I see that spectrum as effectively like one or too many, right? Thinking of blockchain technology. And I believe that actually I actually don't think this is too controversial, but there is a power law distribution of blockchain technologies that do, very well in the long term. I think Bitcoin is clearly one. I think Ethereum is another. I think Solana's got a good shot at being a third. And then I think maybe we have one or two more. And very quickly, the sort of activity and volume falls off. At the very long tail, we have the app chain and app specific world. But I'm actually a man of one. Yeah.
All right. Nicely said. Very well articulated. Next question for you, Avi, is what is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
Ooh, that when I look at the blockchains other than Bitcoin that are successful, that do most of the volume, settle most of the sort of economic value, they at their core use zk technologies.
Very nice. Very nice. I like it. Firm conviction. All right. Well, look, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. As someone who builds in blockchain, you'll be familiar with that kind of thinking, but 10 years indeed is a long time. So cast your mind forward. Anything you like here, Ethereum, Web3, DeFi, a NIL Foundation. What does it all look like in 10 years' time?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna list off some of my 10-year stats that I come back to all the time. we have over 1.5 billion monthly active users, which is roughly equivalent to the currently unbanked population today. And I believe today we're at 60 million, if I'm not mistaken, from A16Z's recent report. I think that 50% of the global digital economy lives on chain. By some estimates, somewhere between 10 to 15 trillion dollars. I think Bitcoin is adopted as a global store of value, and it reaches 50% of gold's market share, which in today's numbers, price is $8.5 trillion. And then number 4, US dollar stablecoin. They amount to at least 15% of the M2 money supply, which again, at today's numbers is a little over $3 trillion.
Nicely said. All right. I like it. 10 years. Another way of thinking about this, of course, though, Avi, is what's a quote by William Gibson, one of my favorites. He famously said, of course, that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So with that in mind, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
I think ZK technology. ZK technology came from literal theory and like papers. 6 years ago. We now have full production, grade ZK systems and ZK proofs, and they're storing, millions, in some cases billions of dollars in aggregate of value. ZK is here. It maybe hasn't, quote unquote, lived up to the hype that the market expected. But at the same time, the market, I don't think, is completely recognized how critical some of these mechanisms are to, securing their assets. And it's because of ZK and its life.
Yeah. Very nice. Brings us nicely to our final question, which is, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or TV show?
Yeah, Dune, definitely Dune. Lots of good kind of, layers, very complex world, politics, economics, family, the hero's journey. I shamelessly watched the movie before I read the book. But in some ways that made it actually a lot better, a lot more enjoyable reading the book. So yeah, Dune for sure.
Okay, so you're someone, you've read the books then and seen the films. Yeah. I shamelessly have not read the books, but I certainly did enjoy the films.
They're fun. They're fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, yeah, no, shout out to that second film was probably one of the I think it's probably the best cinematic experience I've had in maybe the last 10 years. Maybe I don't go to the movies as much as I used to, but just seeing it on the big screen was, that was an epic piece of filmmaking.
Yeah. No, I unfortunately watched it on an airplane, little screen. It was kind of awful, but it was still very good. And I had the airplane headphones, and I'm like this, trying to hear the audio.
Nice. You need if you're gonna watch it on an airplane, you probably need like an Apple Vision Pro or something.
Right. Yeah. Soon. Yeah.
Never mind. Hey, look, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us today. Avi, just close it out by telling people where they can find you on X or anywhere else you like to hang out online. And again, just, shout out the various Nil Foundation digital properties and so on.
Yeah, thanks, Andy, for having me. It was a lot of fun. Again, I'm Avi Zurlo. I'm the CEO at Nil Foundation, building a general purpose layer 2 based on zkSharding. We have our testnet. I think by the time this episode is out, that's live. Follow us on Twitter, Nil_Foundation. You can follow me on Twitter, or sorry, X, of course, at Avi Zurlo. Catch us on the internet.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All the best.
Cool.
And bye for now.
Andy.